Hello, friends.
This is Parenting with Grit and Grace.
That's right, folks. And we're your hosts.
Ben and Riley, but you're not allowed to eat while we do this.
We are.
No.
Mm-hmm.
They can hear you chomping. That's very offensive. There's like a real thing where people have an actual condition that's diagnosed that if they hear chewing, it's like the end of the world. Actually, I think you kind of really don't like to hear chewing.
That's true.
So,
But I think in light of the fact that it was a sour watermelon candy, the only harm will be that someone's salivating because they want one now.
yeah, maybe. Possibly.
Universally, everyone's favorite candy.
Is it?
I think so. Put that mic, just make sure it's right up in that beautiful mug of yours. That's good. Great.
Thank
Because
you.
I want them to hear you speaking as well as me chewing.
Thank you.
So anyways, for those who are on YouTube, hello, good to see you again. And those who are listening on whatever streaming platform you're using, God bless you and keep you. We're here to say this is us. Who are we? Introduction episode. We have a lot of really cool episodes that we want to do on this podcast, in addition to our newsletter that just launched this last year in 2024, which is another way you can find us, and that's just parentingwithgritandgrace.com. But we thought that we would use this medium as well, right? Because it's sometimes easier to listen to folks than to read.
Yeah, or watch.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys can do that. We want to keep them short and sweet because Lord knows that's what kind of margin we have. But before we get into Grit and Grace, I want to give the origin story. And you love telling it, and you're so good at telling it. Tell the people the beginning of the Ben and Riley story.
The beginning
you pick
of
it up,
the story.
I'll cut in.
Yeah, so 4th grade, Mariners Christian School. Ben and I meet. I had already been going there since kindergarten. Ben moved from the ghetto, Riverside.
Oh, gosh. Wow. So I'm sorry. Anyone listening from the Inland Empire, please don't be offended.
Joking.
I pride myself in the ghetto upbringing.
Yep.
Go on.
Riverside, born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history. No.
Wow. Fast forward. We're married.
We're married.
So, yeah, we went to the same elementary school, went to the same public high school. We were always friends. You know, our parents were close from church world. Your dad, of course, being a pastor at Mariners Church. We're in Southern California, so wherever you are, that's our context. We're doing life and parenting and ministry, which is a whole other story. Just doing life and ministry in Orange County. I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah.
Episode 2, you have a great word, quick preview that you're going to talk about. What does it mean to really do family in church and be called to a church?
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Okay, anyways. So we knew each other. We were friends, almost like brother, sister, honestly. We just grew up together.
Yeah. I feel like in high school we didn't run in the same circles, but in junior high we did.
Yeah.
And then
High school, public high school, different circles.
yeah.
You were in the party girl club. I was in the Christian judgmental club.
Yeah, basically.
Right? I mean,
Kind
come
of.
on.
I was in the volleyball club.
Okay.
I'll call it that.
Yeah, so I know what that means.
Exactly. And then next, here comes our first interruption. I love that, Clay. Oh,
we'll
that's
be down
awesome.
in a minute, okay?
Okay.
So one of the awesome features of this podcast studio is that you're going to have interruptions, but that's keeping it real
Yep.
all the
Parenting
time. Yeah.
never ends,
So-
even in the middle of the night. I mean, we were up so many times last night. Who could count?
We thought, let's shoot a podcast because we're in a great state of mind.
You'll get the real raw
Yeah.
Ben and Riley
Right.
with
And
the lack
so,
of sleep.
at the very least, it's evidence that we do have children, and many of them, but we're going to get there in a moment.
Yeah. So, moving forward, we both chose the same university, Azusa Pacific University, not because we wanted to go to school together. We just both chose it, and then we both didn't get in to the main school. We got into a small group of students that got to go to Yosemite Bowl area.
Basically off campus on the reject list. Keep going.
And we went there and for one semester, but we both were dating other people. So that was our getting to know each other again. And then we got back to main campus and we're still hanging in similar circles with the friends we had made in Yosemite. And Ben recruited me for intramural volleyball. And that's really where our dating
That's
story
where the sparks started
happening, because he would walk me home every night. I lived in the mods and he would walk me home because it was late and
only the
so
people
dangerous.
that
In Azusa.
are familiar with Azusa will know what the words the mods mean. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if they exist anymore. That would be circa late 2010s. But Yes, we needed one girl for the team. I knew you were a baller. Got you on the team. Spoiler alert, we won the championship.
Yep.
I still have the championship t-shirt in our closet, which is right over here. We're in the master bedroom in case people didn't know. And I needed to emphasize that because we're bringing you right in to the real deal, the foot of the bed.
Parenting conversations you have at the end of the day. That's kind of our vision. Like, these are our 20-minute parenting chats of encouragement for you guys, like we have at the end of our days.
Yeah.
So
few and far between those quiet moments. So you got to take advantage of them when you get them.
Yep.
So we started dating, and we were both kind of messy because we got out of bad, naughty, just sad relationships, kind of.
And
we came together in a place of pain, is what I'm really trying to say. We came together in a place of pain, vulnerability, and I will speak my part, which is like, you know, falling for you is, people wonder this, you know, even how to coach their maybe adult kids, their teenage kids. But as a pastor, I get this question all the time, like, how do I know? What about a soulmate? And is that a myth? And how do I know about marriage? And for me, looking at you, I knew you were attractive on the outside, but I didn't know until we kind of had this courtship that how beautiful you are on the inside. And here you were, I'm going to go, you know, serve AIDS orphans in Africa, and humanitarian aid is my calling. And I'm like, I thought I was on the planet to serve numero uno, you know, just to make money and serve myself. And so at a soul level, I really did know you're the one, because you're someone who's going to challenge me and even awake some of my calling. And God used that introduction of our relationship in that way.
Yeah, and I felt the same way. Like, you strengthened me in my calling. Your bold and courageous faith paired well with my dreams, because you gave me that encouragement. Like, we can do this together. And so our dating was pretty quick. We dated a year, and then we got engaged. And half of that year, we were actually living in different countries. But got engaged, had a quick 5-6 month engagement, and got married. And it was like the best. We actually loved getting married young and growing up together.
Yeah, that was 2008. Going into our final year at Azusa.
Yep. So we ring by spring.
That's right.
Classic Christian college student
all
story.
You had to get it done.
Had to get it done.
Doer, planner, you.
Yep.
And you were in the global studies program, so of course we went for our honeymoon. Quote. We went to Lima, Peru.
Yes.
And really kind of were interns for 3 months for a wonderful church and nonprofit there.
Yeah, and we stayed with a homestay family where Ben perpetually was ill the entire 3 months.
I was in the bathroom quite a bit. Paper thin walls.
Yeah, so it was a real like jump into marriage and intimacy for sure, with Ben regularly throwing up and being sick. And he lost like 15 pounds. His clothes, literally, by the time we got home, he was so thin his pants didn't fit him anymore. My wardrobe. Yeah. So, but of course I gained 10 pounds somehow. I never got sick and just survived off carbs. Yeah, so it wasn't really fair.
Yeah. But the deeper level issue there that, you know, we all, when we tell people our story, we're sure to say we would never trade it for the world. Yes. We would never do it differently. In fact, we recommend people really go away from family, and most people do in a way, even if it's a week-long honeymoon. But for this extended thing in a more developing context, we had no one else, so we had to lean on each other. And this is like, I love pausing.
And
it
was hard.
It was hard, and that's why I was just saying that I think that's why we pause and camp out in this moment, because our entire platform is grit and grace. And so this was the earliest lesson for us in our oneness, in our family, the foundation of our family being the marriage, where we had to learn about hard things.
Yeah, and how really learning that grit in those first 3 months was a beautiful foundation for our marriage to start on.
Right.
Learning how to do hard things together.
Yeah, and we had to look to each other, had to look to God, and he produced amazing things in us. At the minimum, he produced a strong foundation for the marriage. Yeah. Coming home and doing whatever was next.
Yes.
So we did get home. We served on one more international project in Sri Lanka, South Asia, and that was amazing. 2-3 months there, and we learned a lot. We also realized, man, we need to get a further education if we want to do this as a career. We went to Denver for graduate school in international studies.
Yeah, together.
Yep.
We both got our degrees together, which was really fun. Then we got pregnant with our first child.
Which, by the way, I think begins another thread of our story, which is looking unusual to the culture or to the rest of the world. because here we are showing up at we took most of the same courses that second year at Denver, and here we are showing up to class with a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a little counterintuitive.
I graduated with a little 6 months old. I think he was by then.
2011.
Yeah.
That's Levi, our firstborn.
Yep.
So then the rest will go pretty quickly. But we finished school in Denver. We have our first kid. We can't find work anywhere. I failed the foreign service exam because I thought maybe part of my calling could be diplomacy or doing that kind of communications, international affairs stuff. Failed that, got other plans. We have the baby. Both of our families are in Southern California. So your dad reaches out about a youth pastor position.
Yep. And he says, why don't you guys just move home? You have a baby. Just come work for me until you can find other work.
Well, I said that. So he saw something.
He agreed with it.
Yeah, well, he saw something, I think, in me in terms of pastoral leadership that I never saw myself, truly.
Yeah.
We took that job as a stepping stone. In my heart, I thought, I'll just get home.
Right.
And this will be that stepping stone to leap to the next thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, that summer, maybe I could speak for both of us, fell in love with the work of the local church.
Yeah.
The leadership, the preaching, the teaching, the mission, and even teens goofing off and just being a goofball with teenagers, which is I still say I'm a youth pastor to the stars, even now as a lead pastor. But we fell in love with the local church, and that was we really received our call that summer in 2011.
Yeah, there's no looking back.
Yeah. So that's our local church, which is called Watermark. No connection to the church in Dallas if you're tuning in from Texas. Watermark OC, Watermark Orange County. And again, this is the part that goes rather quickly. We had a burden for a foster care and adoption. A lot of people always want to know, like, how do we know in building our family how many kids is enough? How do we make those decisions at any stage, 20-something, 30-something, 40-something? How do we make those decisions? And we'll get to that in a second, but we didn't know in the beginning. People want to know, did you always know? No, we didn't know we wanted a large family, but we knew we wanted to adopt. And that came from our international background, right?
Yeah. And then when we were in Denver, we were around some foster families, and we had not been exposed to foster care in Orange County. Growing up, I never even knew about foster care, honestly.
Nope.
So seeing these families walk through foster care in Colorado opened our eyes to another way we felt like God was calling us.
Yep.
And that was,
Yeah, I always say, and we've written this down in different platforms, that a kid who needs a home is a kid who needs a home is a kid who needs a home anywhere. So internationally or in our backyard. And so we got licensed and trained, and our home was approved. And then we got a call one day. We're on a wait list. We get a call, and there's the call for Selah, our first adopted kid. By the way, that would be 4 kids later, because we had Levi and Everett and Shepherd, and then came Selah, number 4, and she was our first adopted.
Yes. And I think we'll do a whole podcast on foster care and that whole journey.
Right.
But yeah, she was our first adopted, and then
got that call, picked her up. It's a wild phenomenon. One day you have 3, overnight you have 4.
Yep. It was one of the best decisions we've ever made. Foster care radically changed our lives. Yep. And still does today.
100%. Yeah. It never ends, the journey of learning and stumbling and trying something different.
Yes.
So now back to that question, how did you get so many and how did you make those decisions? We will often say the first multiplier, one of them was, and we'll get there in a second, is like the philosophy and worldview, really a biblical worldview of God blessing the world through the family, through the generations. But we'll get there in a second. The first multiplier was foster care and adoption. Because we got Selah, and then we got calls for 2 of her biological sisters. Yeah. In birth age order, not right away, but as this birth mom was out there having babies, we kept getting the call. So we had 2 more girls, 3 girls from one birth mom.
Yeah. And I think at first we just started loving the idea of a large family, like just by experience. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, I think it was a change in our worldview and how we viewed the Bible and God that really actually changed our view on kids and how many kids to have. Yeah. I think originally we were like most of us, like, how many kids do we want to have? 3, 4? And it was assumed that it was our choice, and it wasn't really something that we even entered God into the conversation in. Mm-hmm. And then over time we started having this conviction, like with any decision, we should be like praying and asking God about how many kids we should have. And there's a really pivotal moment where Ben was actually scheduled for a vasectomy, and I didn't feel peace that day. And even my mom was like, I don't feel peace either. And so we called it off like an hour before he was supposed to have the procedure. And then we said, okay, let's pray for the next 6 months and see what the Lord says. And the Lord we don't have any other stories, I would say, where God spoke so clearly.
Right.
But he spoke through one of our kids and spoke through a speaker at church over the course of about 3 months, saying like the same story of Samuel. And it just spoke to Ben and I that we weren't done having kids, that we needed to open ourselves up again to being open for more children. And so basically after each birth or pregnancy, we've just said we'll pray and ask God if he wants us to have another one, or if it's okay if we're to be done.
Yeah, so the first multiplier of large family was foster care and adoption. The second multiplier was really worldview and mindset. And a huge part of that, by the way, was about our mentors and families that were large families that encouraged us to see the Bible in a different light and to start praying before each pregnancy and surrendering our fertility to God. This is a massive answer to that question. How do I know if we can handle more, and how should we think about that? And this is kind of like a polarizing way to phrase the question, but a dear friend who really is wrestling with these types of questions texted me the other day. He said, do you think that Christians are in sin when they refuse to have more kids? And I said, well, my first just off the cuff reply was like, I don't know if it's so much sin as it is the idolatry of control. Because fertility control is a massive issue, and living in this day and age. And we thank God that we have the modern science and technology where, moms don't have to die at childbirth and babies don't have to die at childbirth and, lose all that. We get that. We appreciate that pragmatism. But we're just saying, and in fact, we're open to God's sovereignty, whether he wants to give or take away. And there's a whole other tangent here about movements, like womb surrender movements. Riley doesn't like that term, prefer that term, because it just speaks to a kind of a kooky Christian culture that's not us. But the premise of saying Riley's body, our bodies, our fertility belongs to God, and we'll pray and at least ask, seek the Lord. What are you saying? Are you it just is a surrender of will, and it's a good exercise at a minimum to say 2 questions we always stopped before each kid. We said, how's our marriage and how's our current load of kids? Now, it's really hard, right? Because just to speak on that for a second, a lot of people will get really stuck on that second question.
Yeah.
Because you think, I'm not enough, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do it.
Yeah, because I actually feel like there are times where we've had, even now, like we have one kid in particular that like probably will struggle for, maybe many years. So, to me, it's just about entering God into the conversation. I honestly think that those women who do the full womb surrender are incredible. Like that is really a faith that is really had inspired me. Like I wouldn't call them kooky. I think they're incredible.
The friends of yours and people you follow, we could name, and they're cool. Other people will be thinking about different cult-like groups that are out there, and they make it a pressure and a legalism, and that's what I'm saying is not cool. And we're far from that.
Yeah, to me, and even I'm not fully there. Like I'm not like full womb surrender. I'm like, Lord, please enter into this conversation and give me the grace to hear you and heed your wisdom on what I'm called to with my body.
Right, that's good. Yep. So hopefully that helps you guys who are processing why large family, why so many kids. We're answering authentically for ourselves, and we hope it inspires and encourages you just to think, just to even get curious. It's not a yes/no judgment. It's just get curious about that. That my friend, when I responded that way, said, okay, so you don't have any problem with the whole thing of a command from God, be fruitful and multiply. And I was like, well, maybe I have an issue with that too.
Yeah. because honestly, I feel like part of it is a gray area. Like we're stumbling through this just as much as I think some other people. I mean, a lot of people don't even wrestle with this idea. Yeah, it's probably more common not to wrestle with it, but Ben and I have wrestled with this a lot and gone back and forth. Like it doesn't mean no prevention, because Ben and I have prevented. Like I tend to get pregnant extremely quickly, even if I'm nursing, and we've like prevented in seasons where it did physically feel like too much, and we felt God's peace in that.
And we've had miscarriages, and God's sovereign over that for the season and for what we were able to do or what he wanted. He spoke through those circumstances. So the last thing I'll say on it is the surrender of our will, wrestling with it. That's what you said, is really what the invitation is for anyone listening. It's not for us to tell people do or don't or feel bad or, but here's the thing, the linchpin for us. When you look at that be fruitful and multiply and you attach it to the generational blessing of kids and reproduction, and that God wants to use the family system to bless the whole world through your generational offspring, adopted and biological, that changes everything.
Yes.
So that was the linchpin for us.
Yeah, that's a worldview change right there. Mm-hmm. Like living like kids are a blessing, which culturally is not the norm,
right.
Sadly.
So we're going to talk about that in later episodes, how the culture says children are a burden. We say children are blessings. So we're going to be leaning into that.
Yeah.
As we wind up this episode, Rye, we thought we would just speak to why Grit and Grace. I mean, why is that the moniker? Why is that the platform title?
Yeah, I think like we even talked about in our early marriage, these two things feel essential for us. Like in our married life, it requires grit and grace for each other and within ourselves, and also in parenting. Mm-hmm. And it's two attributes that we feel like we want to build into our kids.
Right.
And we don't see often a lot of grit training in this like kind of helicopter parenting society.
It's a problem.
Yeah. And grit we would define in like spiritual grit, emotional grit, and physical grit. Like multiple facets to that. And then grace is just, we cannot do anything apart from the Holy Spirit.
We got to have the mercies and grace of God for ourselves. We need to extend that grace to one another, to the kids. It's a whole Trinitarian God and man, marriage and kids, like all the way around. And we just think those words are our DNA, our values for our household, and maybe for a generation too. So you might feel that tension. Man, am I over-parenting? Am I over-protecting? Am I sheltering mind, body, and soul? And what is that tension between grit, tough things, hard things, and grace, forgiving and giving mercy where needed? So we hope that is a thread that's really consistent throughout every episode. We have lots of episodes we want to do in season 1. We're going to be talking about conflict and communication, huge issue in the house. We're going to talk about rhythms and routines, all the categories, meal times, food, morning, bedtime. We're going to talk about sex ed, how sex and intimacy for us has been a building block, and how we talk about it with our teens. We just have one teen, quickly will become 2 teens. We're going to talk about that. We're talking about blowing up your developmental milestones. So much of the pressure for parents is like, man, my kid's not hitting the milestone emotionally or physically or maybe even intellectually. And we just want to say, hey, blow those things up. We'll talk about grit and grace, giving yourself grit and grace in that. We'll talk about the Bible as a life rhythm. And then finally, we'll talk about discipline. So that's all season 1, little preview for those things. And I think they'll be really helpful, right?
Yep. We're excited.
Thank you guys so much for watching. And I just want to ask this. You've heard this from all the other great shows that you listen to and love, but it'll really, really help us serve more people. If you rate and review the show wherever you're listening, whatever podcast platform, if you're on YouTube and you want to share the link, follow us on Instagram, Parenting with Grit and Grace, and just to share and subscribe, rate, and review so we can... The algorithm picks it up and sends it out to more people. We want to help families. Our heart is to help families who are stumbling through this.
Just like we are.
Yep. We're all in it together.
Yep. Thank you.
Have
a great day.
See ya.